Welcome to Escape Files, where we dive deep into the most thrilling, daring, and unbelievable stories of prison escapes, war heroes, and crime mysteries. If you're fascinated by real-life stories that push the limits of human endurance and cunning, you've come to the right place. Today, we're taking you through one of the most notorious prison escapes in modern U.S. history, the incredible breakout of Richard Matt and David Sweat from Clinton Correctional Facility. Let's get into it. It all began in the early summer of 2015 inside the thick stone walls of Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. This prison, more than 100 years old, was built to contain some of the most dangerous criminals in the state. It was designed to be impenetrable, a fortress of stone and iron where escape was supposed to be impossible. Yet, what transpired over the following weeks would shatter that assumption and shock the world. Inside these walls, two men plotted a daring escape. Richard Matt and David Sweat were not your average criminals. Richard Matt was a seasoned career criminal, feared by many, and known for his violent tendencies. He was serving a 25 years to life sentence for murder. Matt had spent most of his adult life in and out of prisons, with a long history of violent offenses. His charisma and manipulative nature, however, made him particularly dangerous, and he had a way of making people do what he wanted. David Sweat, on the other hand, was a quieter man, but just as dangerous. Sweat was serving a life sentence without parole for killing a sheriff's deputy in cold blood. Unlike Matt, who was a master manipulator, Sweat was methodical and intelligent. He had a cold, calculated demeanor that made him a perfect partner for Matt in their plan to break free from the high-security prison. The two men had been housed in adjoining cells in the prison's honor block, an area for inmates who had good behavior. This section of the prison allowed more freedom than other areas, with inmates allowed to cook their own food, wear civilian clothes, and even interact with staff more regularly. The setup of this block would become critical in their elaborate escape plan. The plan began to take shape long before anyone outside the prison had an inkling of what was happening. Matt and Sweat worked tirelessly, night after night, chipping away at the walls of their cells with tools they had obtained through a combination of charm, manipulation, and careful planning. But how did two convicted murderers manage to get their hands on such tools? That's where Joyce Mitchell came into the picture. Joyce Mitchell, a civilian worker at the prison, played a key role in the escape. She worked in the prison's tailor shop and had grown close to both Matt and Sweat. Over time, Matt had charmed and manipulated Mitchell, making her believe that she was special to him. He used her infatuation to get her to smuggle contraband into the prison. Hacksaw blades, chisels, and other tools found their way into the hands of Matt and Sweat, concealed within frozen hamburger meat that Mitchell would bring into the prison. Mitchell, blinded by her emotions and the excitement of Matt's attention, had no idea what she was truly getting herself into. Matt and Sweat's plan was methodical, detailed, and risky. They spent months slowly cutting through the back walls of their adjoining cells, which led to a network of hidden catwalks and tunnels inside the prison walls. Using the smuggled tools, they managed to carve out a route through the bowels of the prison, all while avoiding detection by the guards. Each night after the prison lights went out, the two men would work in secret, chiseling away at the walls and widening the holes they had created. The noise they made was covered up by stuffing their pillows and clothing against the walls. Matt, known for his artistic abilities, even went as far as crafting elaborate decoys to fool the guards. They created fake heads made of plaster and paint, complete with hair, which they placed on their beds to make it look as though they were still asleep. This allowed them to work for hours undisturbed, while the guards thought they were resting in their cells. For months, this plan went unnoticed. Matt and Sweat had carefully studied the prison's layout and routines, observing the guards and learning the prison's blind spots. They were patient, waiting for the right moment to put their plan into action. Finally, on the night of June 5, 2015, everything was in place. Matt and Sweat had finished cutting through the walls and had created an escape route that led them through the maze of tunnels under the prison. Their destination was a manhole outside the prison walls. This manhole would be their way out of the prison and into freedom. That night, after the prison lights went out, Matt and Sweat made their move. They crawled through the holes in their cells, into the narrow, dark passageways behind. The prison walls. The catwalks they navigated were cramped and treacherous, but they had no choice. They had come too far to turn back. Sweat led the way, using a flashlight to guide them through the darkness. As they made their way deeper into the prison's infrastructure, they encountered a maze of pipes, tunnels, and walls that had to be breached. Using the tools they had smuggled in, they cut through iron pipes and cement barriers, inching closer to their goal. The journey was slow and arduous, but they pressed on, determined to taste freedom. After hours of crawling through the tunnels, they reached their final obstacle, a large steam pipe that ran under the prison. The pipe was too small for them to crawl through, so they had to cut a hole in it. With their tools in hand, they began the painstaking process of cutting through the thick metal. Every noise they made echoed through the tunnels, but they were far enough from the guards that they remained undetected. Once they had cut through the pipe, they squeezed through the narrow opening and found themselves in a tunnel that led to a manhole cover outside the prison walls. This was it. Freedom was just a few feet away. They climbed up the ladder and pushed open the manhole cover, emerging onto the street outside the prison in the dead of night. They had done it. They had escaped. For the first time in years, Richard Matt and David Sweat were free men. But their freedom would be short-lived. The moment their escape was discovered, a massive manhunt was launched. Law enforcement agencies from all over the state, including the FBI and U.S. Marshals, descended on the area in search of the two fugitives. The hunt for Matt and Sweat would become one of the largest and most intense manhunts in U.S. history. In the days following their escape, Matt and Sweat fled into the dense woods surrounding the prison. They had planned to meet up with Joyce Mitchell, who was supposed to drive them to freedom. However, Mitchell had a change of heart at the last moment and never showed up. Now Matt and Sweat were on their own, with no transportation and limited supplies. For 3 weeks, the two men evaded capture, surviving off the land and stealing supplies from cabins in the area. They moved through the woods, staying out of sight as law enforcement combed the region. The manhunt involved more than 1,000 officers, helicopters, and K-9 units. The public was gripped by the story, as news outlets provided constant updates on the search for the fugitives. Despite the massive search effort, Matt and Sweat managed to stay one step ahead of the authorities. They had spent months planning their escape, and their knowledge of the area gave them an advantage. However, their luck would eventually run out. On June 26, 2015, Richard Matt's luck came to an end. After weeks on the run, he was spotted by law enforcement officers in a remote area near Malone, New York, about 40 miles from the prison. Matt, who had been armed with a shotgun he had stolen from a cabin, refused to surrender. When he raised the weapon at the officers, they opened fire, killing him instantly. Matt's life of crime and violence had come to a violent end. David Sweat, on the other hand, managed to continue his escape for a few more days. But on June 28, 2015, his run finally came to an end as well. He was spotted by a New York state trooper just a few miles from the Canadian border. When Sweat attempted to flee, the trooper shot him twice, wounding him. Sweat was taken into custody and rushed to a hospital, where he was treated for his injuries. The escape of Richard Matt and David Sweat captivated the nation and raised serious questions about security inside American prisons. How had two convicted murderers managed to escape from a maximum security facility? How had they been able to manipulate a civilian worker into helping them? The investigation that followed uncovered a series of failures and lapses in security that had allowed the escape to happen. Joyce Mitchell was arrested and charged with aiding the escape. She pleaded guilty and was sentenced to prison for her role in the escape. The escape of Richard Matt and David Sweat remains one of the most infamous prison breaks in modern U.S. history. Their ability to outwit the system, manipulate those around them, and evade capture for so long is a testament to their cunning and resourcefulness. But their story also serves as a cautionary tale, highlighting the vulnerabilities within the prison system and the devastating consequences of failing to recognize the warning signs of an impending escape. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more incredible escape stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Here at Escape Files, we're committed to bringing you the most captivating tales of daring and courage from around the world. Stay tuned for our next story, where we'll dive into another